Tonight we have Cecilia Riley and Mike Gray who live in Fort Davis. They're magnificent birders, birders of magnificent birds, or whatever you want to call it. They're talking about their trip to Panama, the cultural and natural history of Panama. And I don't really think I have anything else to say. So if you'd like to start up.
That's good.
This is obviously Cecilia.
Hi, I'm Cecilia. Mike, you want to come up here?
It's
So I was going to start tonight, and Mike is going to take over with his wonderful photography because I don't remember the names of everything we saw, but he does because he had to put it together. But so we started out on a 2-week journey to Panama. It was in September of last year. So I travel a lot with our family flock. So all my sisters, which are up here, well, actually one sister is missing. She didn't go on that trip. But we're all bird watchers. And so we travel together a lot. And of course, Mike Gray is up there. My brother-in-law, Scott, who's married to one of my sisters. And the gentleman that's there was just one of the lodge guys. So he was a lodge manager or something. So this was a fun family vacation for us, and as they all are. So I was going to start out tonight with just a little bit of information about Panama. I don't know tons about it, but I did look up some on the internet, and I had a wonderful guide while we were there who shared a lot of insight about Panama with us. And so it's a Central American country. It's nestled between Costa Rica and Colombia, which you can see up here, and the Caribbean Sea on one side, and the Gulf of Panama and the North Pacific Ocean on the other. So it's completely surrounded by water. It's a very rugged landscape, not highly developed at all outside of Panama City. There's over 500 rivers and fast-running, rushing river streams, rivers and highland streams, which we'll show you some video of in a little while. It's pretty amazing when it rains. It's a very tropical climate. It ranges from 75 to 86 degrees all year round. There's very little seasonal variation. And even though it says 86, it probably was only 86, but it felt like 200 degrees in some of the places where we were. 40% of the country is still forested, which makes it a mecca for all different kinds of wildlife. Birds, dragonflies, and amphibians in riparian areas, and lots of butterflies or mariposas. A little bit more about the early history of Panama. It was before Spanish rule, it was primarily just a wilderness with lots of indigenous cultures living there. Under Spanish rule for 300 years, starting in 1538, there was a lot of disgruntlement, as you can imagine, from the indigenous peoples. Many of them moved further out, away from the settlement areas, just to find some land and some space and some ability to be away from the Spanish. The Spanish colonized the area and were really interested in Panama, primarily because it was a narrow route to transport the silver they were plundering from Peru to get it over to Europe. So that was their interest in Panama. But after many years, many decades, in 1821, the Peruvians abandoned the Spanish and joined up with Colombia and became part of Colombia. Then in 1903, with help from the U.S., they seceded from Colombia and held their own country. And very soon after that, the U.S. led the construction of the Panama Canal, which started in 1904. It was completed in 1914. It's a 52-mile long canal with a 10-mile wide swath on each side of development and protection zone to protect the canal. So in 1999, after at least 30 years of disagreements with the U.S. It was finally, a treaty was signed, I believe, during the Carter administration to transfer the canal to Panama, which they did. So their current culture, there's 4 million residents, half of which live in Panama City, which is a huge city, and then we've got a picture of it later, I think you can see it. There's a blended culture of African, Native American, and European. 12% are indigenous peoples, 8 groups each with their own language. Very few of them speak Spanish. They live all across the country. Their traditional products, wood carvings, ceremonial masks, and pottery are all very important to them, as is tourism, because it's their primary source of income. The gross domestic product of Panama, of course, are the tolls to the canal, number one. Banking is huge, which I had no idea, but global banking is very important there. And tourism, natural tourism, tourism of nature, but also there's a lot of canal tourism. It gets a lot of people there to see the canal. So this slide Mike put together from some of his pictures that he took, just to kind of give you an overview of what it takes to get to Panama. It's a 3-hour drive to Midland, and then an 1.5-hour flight to Houston, then a 4-hour flight to Panama City. We overnighted in Panama City that evening because you arrive after dark, the late flights, and we stayed at a really nice hotel. They picked us up the next morning and drove us out to the Canopy Lodge. So there's an organization there called the Canopy Family, and they have 3 lodges scattered across Panama, and it's kind of an all-inclusive tour company. So if you want to go visit the Panama family, they pick you up at the airport, they take you to one of their 3 lodges, you stay a few nights at the first lodge, then they transport you to the second lodge, and then they transport you to the 3rd lodge, which is well down in the Daharin. And a lot of people don't go down there simply because it's so remote, but that's what we did, so it was nice. So what Mike has here is an image that shows our very first camp, which I'm going to try to use this and see if it'll point. Did I point your eyeball, Linda?
Nope.
Can you see that one right there?
It's over there.
Well, let's see. It
bounces off
It's
that
bouncing.
screen.
That one right there. That was our first camp, right here. He took 2,183 pictures.
That's how many are left.
That's how many are left. It's a lot. So that was our first camp, and we stayed there 4 nights, I think. And then we moved over to the second Canopy family place, the most famous one, the Canopy Tower, which was the first one built in the Canopy family. And he took 2,978 pictures there. So we're going to be here a while tonight. And then our 3rd camp was all the way down here at the end of the Pan American Highway. And I think that says 3,000.
No, not quite to the end. That's it.
I think that says 3,000. And then these are a couple of stops we made in route between those places. So anyway, so we have a lot of pictures to show you, and we'll get started on those. And we'll let Mike take over here because his camera gear that he took with him. For those how many people here are photographers? 1? Okay, so you don't want to spend a whole lot of time on all this stuff.
That just gives you an idea of what I carry. I basically, for people that do photography, basically carry lenses from 14 millimeters all the way to 400 in this particular trip, but with my tone converters could go to 8. On the last trip, I doubled the size of the biggest lens, so I do have an 800 now. But that just gives you an idea of how much gear I'm carrying with me. Anyway, this is I'm going to let you say this.
His name is Igwa. He was our indigenous guide throughout he was our primary guide throughout most of the trip. He was an amazing person. He spoke very good English, excellent Spanish, and 4 of the 8 languages that are spoken in Panama, which was really good because we went to a lot of places where we needed to get access. And because he has such a great relationship and speaks their language, we were able to go to a lot of unique places.
This is a canopy lodge. We surprisingly took almost 0 pictures of the lodge itself. A really nice lodge with a huge gardens. I mean, these places are acres, and they have their own trails. They have everything. Their garden that was in this one was set up for. They do more than just kids. They do kids stuff because they had like tree houses. They had all kinds of weird stuff in the lodge ground. I don't know if they use it that much because now it's more for birds. Did I see anything there? Oh, you're supposed to say.
Just that it's the Cosil province. There are 10 provinces in Panama. We only made it to 3 of them, but this is one of the 3. It's primarily an agricultural area outside of the grounds of this lodge. So we would take day trips out, and we birded a lot of those agricultural regions, and there was some really good birds there.
I'll go back for a second. Give you some idea. This is the edge of Panama. This is Costa Rica. We didn't bird any of this. We just basically did the lower half of the country. And you can see the Darien National Park, and that white line through there is their border with Colombia. The Canopy Lodge rainforest elevation was 2,100 feet. It was the highest lodge we stayed at. And that's a crimson back tanager in the rain.
It rained a lot there.
And you can get an idea of the rain. This is the best lodge picture.
It's beautiful for us, though. Bromeliads were growing on everything. That's rainforest. Steps up to the common area where we did a lot of birding.
Because you're under a shelter and you don't get wet. That's me and our local, that was the lodge guy. Cleaning staff is very into when we cleaned our room. Cecilia had already stole one of the arms before I did. They used my hat, Cecilia's t-shirt, our checklist, and we got about chocolate.
Got all kinds of stuff. And made little, so they were really.
But this is the creek right by the front of the lodge, and you can see it running down. And here's what happens when it rains. We had stuff like the common basilisk lizard laying on the rocks in the middle of the creek when it wasn't a torrent. This is also called the Jesus Christ lizard that likes to run on water. He can actually run across a lake. It's just sheer speed. Had a lot of different dragonflies, damselflies. These are a couple of the really nice damselflies I photographed. One's a racket-tipped ruby spot. The other is what's called a blue-winged helicopter. And if you saw this fly, you'd know why it's called a helicopter. It's really weird looking when it's moving through the sky. We had a lot of parrots and parakeets. This is the blue-headed parrot. They come in and we're eating the flowers out of the gardens. A rufous motmot. This is the bird this was taken close to the feeders of the lodge. This bird sits, after this bird grows its tail, it actually makes that racket at the bottom. It pulls the feathers out to create that. This was a gray cowled wood rail. that was found in the main garden. He was running around under the feeders during the day. You could see him almost anytime you wanted to. But, you know, rails aren't the easiest thing in the world to see, but this one was pretty easy and easy to photograph. Carmine skimmer, this is one of the big dragonflies. They had a kind of a wetland / pond, and they had tons of dragonflies. And that's a carmine, which is because of the color. Here's what's called a Hercules skimmer. I could do this all day. I took lots of pictures of these things. Right at the road coming into the lodge, there was a big kind of, I guess it's a cecropia tree that didn't have very many leaves. And he was always hanging around. That's the three-toed sloth, brown-throated three-toed sloth. And you'll notice that he's green. That's algae. He grows more on him. The amount of stuff that grows in a sloth is unbelievable. There's this is actually not my picture. I used Scott. Scott's also a photographer, but I had him send me this because Cecilia gave me her one she did that she took through a scope with her phone.
Yeah,
and
that good.
But I am a photographer, so I don't typically go on some of these ridiculous long hikes that they do. Because you won't get any pictures. You just walk around and carry a lot of heavy camera gear.
I had a list of birds that I was looking for in Panama for my life list. So I think I had 65 species I was trying to find, something like that. 65 or 70.
Yeah.
And you took that picture with a cell phone?
No, I
he
got
wouldn't
that.
let me put my cell phone picture in there. So my
You can take
brother-in-law,
people that really know how to do it can take really good pictures with a scope and a cell phone. If you have the attachment gear, it works really, really well. If you come to the Hummingbird Festival and the guy from Swarovski comes, the pictures he takes with his scope are.
but my brother-in-law took that picture and he was birding with me.
He has essentially the same camera gear I have, so. But this is streak-crested anthill. This is one of the secretive ground birds. Now, I don't know about how hard it was finding these birds in Panama, but in Ecuador, these birds were never even seen before somebody learned how to feed them. And now they're, I took one, Cecilia was taking pictures of anthills with her cell phone, but she stuck it up in their face almost. Because they're eating meat, they're used to being fed. But they're really short-tailed, really long legs, hardly ever fly, but can. And they just walk through the forest eating any bugs and insects and worms they can find. Orange-chin parrot, that's another bird that just was consistently coming to the lodge all the time. It also likes to eat flowers. This is a yellow-headed caracara, one of the other caracaras, kind of like our caracara, but looks quite a bit different. And during the trip, I photographed 21 different species of raptors. This is a spectacled owl. This is a juvenile, just out of the nest. Well, he's been on the nest for a while. He's got a lot of wings. But the guides all know where these birds nest, and so they generally take us in. The parents ran away before I could get a picture, but the juvenile couldn't run away very well, so outside of having to find a hole through the leaves to shoot him in the rain, best I could do. Got one out anyway. We did go up to a recreational area for a resort development. We actually went to the whole development, and this is I would say it's not anywhere close to complete. They've got, if you wanted to live there, there's a lot of lots up there, I think, for sale. But they had their pool, they had this, and there's a pond below. This was our highest elevation we ever made to, was 31 to 3,500 feet. This is the lunch, that's typical lunch for us. They bring it with us and we just have it wherever. In this case, we used their recreational area. This was really important to see. She had several key birds targeted for this area, and the whole half day of this trip was just totally rained out. The last 2 trips I've done to the tropics, I've spent way too much time in the rain and the clouds for a photographer. This is an emerald. This is one of the birds we did see up there. She was wanting a different one because the northern emerald toucanet that she got to see is the one she did her master's thesis on in Costa Rica. So she's seen quite a few of these birds, chased them all through the forest in Costa Rica many, many years ago.
Early 80s.
The black-throated trogon we got also up there. This is one of 4 different trogon species, probably the only one I have in this show, even though the other pictures are actually better. But this is a harder to get bird. And then after that, we got in the car after 4 days. We birded in the morning and headed immediately down to the tower. This is the Canopy Tower. It's an old U.S. Air Force radar dome converted to a birding lodge. It's
the most famous
It's
place
one of the
to
most-
bird in Central America.
Central America. It's the other thing I say about it, it is at the highest point above the canal. Where you want to put your radar. And all let's see is, because this is her little.
Well, this was an image that they had on the wall inside, and it had these nice pictures, these before and afters, as you can see. Before it became the birding lodge that it is, it was quite run down, had been abandoned for a long, long time, and the forest jungle had grown up all around it. So it was constructed originally in 1963 by the U.S. military during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was a way for them to defend the canal from any possible Soviet attack, which we were all afraid of at that point. Later it was used for air traffic control and communications with ships and that sort of thing, but still even the U.S. military abandoned its operations. In 1996, the tower and the entire 35,000 acre forest that surrounded it, which was part of the U.S. military, was transferred from the U.S. to Panama. And it's now Sobriana National Park. So it was really difficult for them to decide what they could do with it, because in a national park you can't construct buildings. National parks are for wildlife. But a gentleman by the name of where is his name? Raul. I can't even see it on here.
There it is. It's right there.
Yeah, Raul Arias de Parra, who was a Panamanian businessman who had a real interest in tourism, not just bird tourism, but he also built a canopy tower zip line down near the tower, the lodge where we first stayed, and he just thought it would be really a good ecotourism opportunity to develop this site, and he did get permission to do that. Because it was not creating a new tourism center in a national park, but it was just utilizing facilities that were there, cleaning them up and fixing them up so it could be used. And then in 1999, the tower was inaugurated after a lot of paint and a lot of improvements on the inside. This is the lobby when you first walk in. You can see the staircases. There's some nice artwork. This artwork depicts all the wildlife that you can see from the canopy tower, we call it the stairway to heaven, at least for birders. We climbed those stairs many, many times throughout the day. I'll never forget the first time I went up, the first level, I thought, we have to do this every day for 4 days, 4 or 5 times a day? I'm not sure I can do it, but it gets real easy after the first time you struggle up there. But anyway, so the lobby is on the ground floor. There are some small rooms on the second floor.
Suite.
Yeah.
Jumping stuff.
Yeah. So there's a suite. So this was our room on the 3rd floor, and this is a suite. It's simple, but it was larger than most of the other rooms, so the suites are bigger, and you have great views out the window, just overlooking the canopy. And this is where they decorated our beds. They did that here too, and this was called the Blue Katinga Suite. And there's a little rug out there with a blue katinga on it, and that was another one of our target birds, and we did get plenty of them here. So that was fun, and there was this little swing on this tiny little porch. It was kind of creepy being out there because you're up pretty high, and it's just a little metal railing kind of holding you up, but anyway, it was safe enough. And then up on the third floor,
The fourth.
fourth floor is where the restaurant is. And so when we got there, when we arrived, they had lunch or dinner, I can't remember which, waiting for us there. And this was our welcome tinamou, which is a kind of a bird that we were all looking for. But here it was baked into a slab of bread. And so we made pretty short work of that bird. And then this is the upper deck with the big dome, and where you get a great view of Panama City, the Panama Canal, and then all the wildlife that you get to see there is fantastic because you're at canopy level, you're at canopy height with the critters. And so every day when you're at the canopy tower starts out about 6 o'clock in the morning with coffee on the upper deck. And see what you can see while they're downstairs, one flight below us, preparing an enormous breakfast, which we had every day. So it was fun being up there. And this is a picture, you can see the cargo ship going through the canal. And this
Give you
was,
some idea.
yeah, it's high. And you can see the mountains. I can't see Panama City's in
No,
a
we don't.
different
There's no
direction
picture of
in
Panama
this
City.
picture.
I have
I have them too, but we should put that in there. Panama City's kind of off to the left. But anyway, this is one of the really cool critters we saw from the canopy deck.
Yeah, this is the Godfrey. However you want to
That's
say it.
right,
Cameron.
Godfrey's.
He's a primate. They literally come up and beg for food. We feed them. They feed them bananas.
Yeah, we don't feed them, they put bananas out for them.
And at night, they have a pulley system that runs out of the kitchen window, and they have a throw banana string too. But this is the throw, and you throw it out, and the banana's hanging there. And this is a woolly possum, a Central American woolly possum, taken at night. And this one's even neater. This is a kinkajou. And he's not very good at it, but he knows that on that pulley system there, that the banana's at the other end. The only problem is he's got the wrong string. If you'd grabbed the other one, he probably could have pulled the banana too. We shortly gave him this banana. And the most fun thing, well, those are both extremely fun, but also at night is we have all these, and they're the night monkeys that come up. And they literally were sitting down there under the window. We had been eating, and we walked over to the window, and those two monkeys were standing there just looking up at the window like this going, "Are you going to feed us tonight?" So we got the kitchen staff out, and they got them some bananas. And up in this trip, I never ever heard of a night monkey. These are monkeys that only forage at night. And then during the day, this is a mountain howler. That's the one that makes the god-awful noises that you can hear for miles from them. And this is a mother with her little one. If you pay attention, you'll see her. Here she is eating some crocria fruit, and the little one's reaching down trying to grab some too, I think. He's hanging on for dear life. That's typical for a baby mammal howler, is hanging on the mother and hoping he doesn't fall off. Because it's a long ways to the ground. This mammal howler is 5 stories up in the air. This is a really nice picture of a three-toed sloth that was just parked in the tree right next to the tower. the brown-throated three-toed sloth. And you can't really see it on this picture, but if you look at his back, he's got this really unique kind of pattern on his back that's bare. And one of the more famous birds, the Kill-Bill toucan, probably the deal for Fruit Loops. And I just love this picture because of the tree. And usually I would be showing a picture of full frame Kill-Bill toucan. And then we had a lot of hummingbirds. This is a view, the blue-chested hummingbird. And I photographed 16 different species of hummers on this trip. Not a large number for me because I do a lot of photography in South America, and the numbers for hummingbirds just go through the roof once you get to South America.
But 16's pretty good for Panama.
That's a pretty good number. This is the white-vented plumeteer, one of the larger hummingbirds. This one's probably close enough the same size as our Wrigley slash, what's now used to be called the Magnificent or blue-throated mountain gem, which are the two really big ones here. This is one of the little bitty ones. This is the striped-throated hermit. They have really long, hermits tend to have very long tails and this really wicked curved bill. Our guides were pretty good. He was, as we were driving down the road, he noticed this crawling through, and this is not a very big snake, maybe this long, maybe that big around, but it's a barred horse racer that I managed to get a picture of. Another place where this was at an interesting spot. This was actually in one of the large developed areas along the canal. We didn't really do too many pictures at it, but it's where all the workers were at when they were in the canal. And it's
Gamboa.
It's Gamboa,
It's
yeah.
the town that the U.S. military built to house all the people who worked on the canal.
And it's pretty much, there's still people there, but it's pretty run down now. It's a lot of housing that's not getting much use anymore.
But there's still a lot of American expats that live in that area and live in those old colonial style housing that was built.
But that's a black and white owl, if I failed to mention that. This is Central American agouti, a common rodent. They're about that big. See them all over the place. This was actually at the same place, feeding in a yard. They have a small overflow place. The Canopy Camp Lodge has a small overflow place here that they put people up in. And this is coming in to get the food at their feeders there. This is the rufescent tiger heron. He was hunting along. This is along the canal. We were birding the wetlands around the canal. And this is a really beautiful heron. Quite magnificent. And we were going on all the daily field trips because during the day you get up, do the bird tower, you eat breakfast, and then either like me, you might stay at the lodge and just work the feeders and the hummingbird feeders, or you get in the birdmobile and you go to different places, including Pipeline Road. And that's, you can tell, the same group.
And Pipeline Road goes through along the canal, parallel with the canal, but through the National Forest.
She didn't really put the history in on the Panama Canal, the Pipeline Road, but the Pipeline Road was built to put in a pipeline to move the oil in case
The Soviets came after us. Remember we had all this horrible fear the Soviets were going to.
And they were going to be able to move the oil across the canal, and this pipeline was built and never used.
Yeah, never used.
Never used, but it was
Now
built.
it's a very famous and very accessible birding road.
Yeah. It's accessible if you're...
Mostly on foot.
Mostly on foot. It's pretty muddy.
Yeah.
And of course, we got rained on every day, so it was real muddy. But to see, what did you say that got famous because they did a...
They did a big day, and they got 350 species of birds in one day walking this road.
Wow.
So that's the highest number for a big day in Central America.
This is the Great O2, which is a new bird for me. It's got probably most of the others, maybe missing one more. But that's a really big, and of course the problem is he's in a big high tree. And,
Well, and they're nocturnal, so it was asleep when
Yeah,
we
and he
saw
stays
it during the
asleep.
day.
I made got one picture with his eye kind of. And then we left and we drove down and we stopped. One of those little places was the restaurant we used coming and going. And the real reason we go there is because they have a hummingbird feeder and this bird comes to it. It's a beautiful snowy bellied hummingbird, which is the first time I'd seen it.
And that was a life bird for everybody on the trip.
Yeah. And he was super cooperative. I could almost stick my camera in his nose, but doing a little bit of stretch there. The only problem was he wanted to hide under the canopy of it. It was actually under the roof.
Well, that's where they had to feed.
That's where they had to feed him. That's where he liked to perk, stay out of the sun or the rain. And now we're basically moving what's called the Darien Province. Do you want to talk about the Darien? I call her, as you say, Daharin. Daharin. But this is a very large swath of undeveloped forest with no roads. This is the gap in the Trans-Pacific Highway. There is no road through the Daharin at all. Literally, you go to Columbia, you get in a car, you get in a ferry, and you go around to Panama City to get, or whatever the Caribbean coastal town is, if you're driving. If you want to drive to South America, you got to take a ferry here. And it's like, did you say 60 miles?
Yeah, from the nearest Colombian road.
There's 60 miles, there's nothing there, except forest, wetlands, and this is where all the migrants are coming through.
Yeah.
They walk through this.
Yeah.
It's very few population. We boated around in it, and you'll see a lot of that. It's 5,000 square miles of forest. It's probably one of the most valuable things for us as far as oxygen and climate change and everything else because it's pretty much untouched.
Except for migrants and
and
drug runners.
drug runners, tourists,
And birders.
and burgers. The canopy camp in the Darien, that's our dining area. You can see my camera laying on the table. Those little things on the wall in the back are actually the little masks that the tribes make, the different people make. So that's where we ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And there's the typical field. Let's see.
It's such a blended culture in Panama that the foods are really mild, lots of corn, lots of rice, lots of yuca, lots of fish, and lots of chicken. And none of it's very spicy. Fortunately, they had some little bottles of hot sauce and stuff that tourists could use to spice things up a little bit. But the food was good and plentiful, but just a little on the bland side.
The Darien, where we are, the canopy is totally, it's almost at the end of the Panama Highway, almost.
It's off grid.
And it's off grid. That solar panels right there are the only power we had. The little green building in the back is actually their battery room. So that's where we get all our power. It was kind of like when we were in Africa because that's the same thing. All our camps were totally solar powered. This is our tent. It's a permanent tent. The little thing off to the left, the green thing, is our bathroom with all running water, flush toilets, all that good stuff. The little slats I'll show later, but you can get an idea. There's me in one of the two beds. It's hot and humid.
It was so bad there. I couldn't believe it. I had forgotten how humid
But
it
that,
would be.
in the camp, it really wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
We'll talk about how bad it is. Canopy camp in the Darien, that's our open air shower. Literally, those slats were our shower, so it's open air.
It was fun.
You can get the shower and rained on at the same time. This is kind of the view from our corner of our tent. There's a little different view. with the Panama, probably done with the phone. And there's a white-nosed coati that liked to come and eat the bananas off the banana tree next to our porch. He was leaning on our porch right there,
Looking in.
looking in. What are you guys up to? The trails, they had a lot of trails, and they were all muddy and steep. You were always going up and down, even though we weren't all that high, because we were really close to the ocean here. And here's our friends. The white-faced capuchins were everywhere. They ate tons of bananas. They just gave them to them by the hand. Because bananas are, a hand of bananas, I remember when we were in Ecuador, Jane said they cost a whole $5. And I'm talking about a hand that's from here to the floor. And they loved them. They were, like I said, irresistible to photograph. What's the city put on that slide?
Because you had so many pictures of it.
Crested or pendula was one of the more common ground birds. I mean, camp birds. He was coming in for the bananas too. And then we had several hummingbirds. I think I photographed 9 species of hummers in the Darien, probably all at the lodge of feeders. This is the blue-throated golden tail. There's a long-billed star throat defending a feeder from an intruder. They don't like each other there either. And this is a black-breasted mango. I really love the birds that have black on, the hummingbird with black on. They're usually gorgeous birds. They had a hole set up so you could photograph the king vulture. This was taken from the blind. You can see the blind. And where I'm standing is where all the cows' heads are, because what they do is they go to the people that butcher cows, and they buy the cow heads from them. The cow heads come, they just dump them down, and all the black vultures and king vultures come in and eat. So I had pictures of that. I decided to leave them. There are people who want to see a dead cow head half eaten. But it's an absolutely gorgeous vulture, and it's big. He's about twice as big as a black vulture. You want to talk about your stat slide?
I thought we already did that.
Did you cover that?
So why is that in there again?
Review.
Yeah, now you're back at the beginning.
What happened? Oh. I went all the way to the front. You'd see everything twice.
That's okay.
Okay, and when because I'm usually at the lodge and they're out birding, so I'm out roaming around and doing things like photographing vultures while they're in a different bird mobile, but essentially the same thing. And I found a Weiner's cyclone, which is a very long, it's about 6 foot, probably at least 6 foot long snake. He just totally ignored me, and I got some fairly reasonable pictures of him slipping through the forest.
We thought it might be like an indigo snake because it was really, really large, like our indigos are. But once we got back, I think John Carr decided that for you, didn't he?
No, I think it does. Somebody on INAT.
Look it up. Yeah.
INAT, I just put stuff on INAT. Soon, somebody will usually, especially snakes, will get a name.
Yeah, people love those snakes.
The villages, this is a typical village where we rode in a boat down to the village. You can see this is where she took that handicraft picture. And the guy that's walking towards the picture is actually our local guide. He took us out with our indigenous guide. This is the guy that actually lived in the village that knew all the trails.
And the Kennedy family, pays all of them for us to have access to these places. So they're real happy when the birders come because they make money.
You'd see some really neat things like the golden green woodpecker. Challenging in the rain, pictures of these things. One of the things that was very hot, humid, hike, and I did this hike for sure, and that was to get the picture of this crested eagle. This bird's almost 3 feet tall when he's standing up. While we're boating, we did this out of the canoe, photographed the black orb pendula, which is a pretty rare bird, hard to see, but we photographed that
Another
out.
blackbird for everyone.
Probably another light bird for everyone, definitely for me. But then we're going on I'm calling as the Cecilia's target bird hunt. She had one target, was the target bird for the trip. We started out by driving to the river.
To the end of the road.
End of the road, the river, got in a canoe at the little town there. I think did we have to have 2 canoes? No, we all
Just
used
one.
Anyway, there we are going down the canoes. There's migrants. What they do there is it turns out we found out they have a migrant village, and these are all the people that have walked completely through the area. They have medical people there, they help them, and then the locals move these people to Panama City, and then they're put on buses and sent to Costa Rica. Costa Rica picks them up, moves them through Costa Rica, and they just keep going. I don't know how many countries they're on their own, but Costa Rica and Panama move them. But this gives you an idea. We're motoring. This is what the waterways look like. You are in the middle of a rainforest.
Everyone there, all the families have boats because that's how they get everywhere, because there are no roads.
Yeah, and some people, because one of the situations, one guy owned the boat and the other guy that was working owned the motor.
Yeah, we immigrated into those.
This is not a rich country.
Not in the indigenous lands anyway.
This gives you some idea of this.
The guides were always watching for a bird, so if they saw one, we'd pull over.
Yeah. Here's where we're probably closer. They're looking really seriously now, going a lot slower. But we did this more than one day, but this is just, but then when we got there, after we got down the river to the ranch, the rancher and his family came down and got us. And they took us up to their house, and they put us on horses. Actually, that's his wife that's got Mary Beth's horse, and the guy in the back is the owner of the place. And the reason we're on the horses isn't because we didn't really ride these horses. These horses were drugged with us on them. It was the mud was that deep.
Yeah, it went up to the horses' bellies, and they didn't think we could walk through it, nor would we have wanted to.
But there we are being drugged. Every horse has its own person leading it or dragging it. And you get some idea. Look at Cecilia's horse now. It's mud up to, and everywhere we stop, they have nice little steps for us
There's
to
a
get
little
on.
log there so we could get on and off the horse.
I've ridden all my life. I could have got on and off the horse, but it wouldn't even let me. And there was our target. The harpy eagle. This bird is over 3 feet tall. His legs, it's considered one of the most powerful birds. There's another one in the Philippines called a monkey eagle. And the Philippine monkey eagle may be bigger and more powerful than this bird, but this bird's legs are this big around. He crushes monkey skulls just like that. When he tries to grab the sloth, the monkey by the head, and he crushes their skull in the first squeeze.
That's gross.
But that had a chick. And I was laying on the ground photographing straight up. And this is where it was miserable.
Oh my
Mosquitoes,
gosh, it was awful.
humidity,
The bird
hiking.
was good, it was worth it.
And then the last day we hiked in before we got in the bus to head back to, and we got Cecilia's last live bird for the trip. Her total trip species list was 304 for the whole 2 weeks. And she added 50 live birds to her life, which is closing in on 3,000 or maybe over 3,000. She's not sure. She doesn't have everything in it yet. But anyway, that's basically our trip to Panama. We went back, spent one more night in the hotel, and did the return flight.
So a life bird is what?
A bird you've never seen before.
In your life. In other words, she's seen 3,000 different birds in her life. So if she adds one,
Always
it's a
looking
new
for
one.
another one.
But this is the picture I took out of my window not that long
Y'all
ago.
heard about the solar
That's the
park
solar
fire?
park fire.
It was close. But the winds were blowing it away from us, so.
Yeah, it wasn't, a lot of people were freaking out. I knew where the winds were, where the fire was, but I wasn't worried about it. But we both are, I'm the treasurer, Cecilia is the president of the Trans-Pecos Bird Conservation Group. We do the hummingbird celebration,
Among other things.
among other things. We are doing the celebration again this year from the 17th through the 20th. We are going for the first time to actually have a real event center. We are going to do it at High Frontier, which Tim Crowley is completely rebuilding from the ground up. That is the brand new building that you can see if you're driving along Whiskey Creek and you look up on the ridge. That's the pavilion. It probably will seat 500 people easily. They've also redone the entire gymnasium, and it's called the Arena. It's another place that will seat several hundred people. They have kitchens, they have new bathrooms. And in the end, it's a 5-year plan for the High Frontier. They're going to be able to house over 100 guests. They'll have a high-end Mexican restaurant, which is we won't be finished for about another year. But they've got a kitchen up right next to this. So this is going to be pretty special.
Is it still for young people?
No. It's turned into
sold it.
It was bought by Tim Crowley when they closed it down during COVID for the kids. And this has been turned into a high-level event center for weddings and other events. Imagine it'll have, like businesses, big companies come in and have
Who knows what yours is?
what they'll do with it in the end. But they've had 2 weddings up there already, and they plan on having, and this will be the first real big event that will be on the calendar.
We're the guinea pigs.
Does anybody have any questions for him?
I have a question about the Darien. I've been to Panama a few times, but I saw tourists stayed away from the Darien because of contrabandistas, the drug runners and stuff. Is that changing, I guess?
Well, it kind of goes up and down depending on what's going on, but it's been really good for the last 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
There haven't been any issues or problems, especially with more tourism there. They just go deeper in the jungle and do different things.
It's kind of like here. There are nobody sees them. They come.
I mean,
they
you
go
know what's
through.
happening here, but it doesn't really affect us, right? So, yes.
I'm curious, since the canal zone has been returned to the nation of Panama, is there much of a U.S. government presence there any longer? And is the canal functioning to an international standard?
I think so. Matter of fact, what they've done is they've increased. They just built bigger canal to handle the bigger boats, so they can actually handle the big. I should know. I worked in the whole business for friggin' ever, but they've widened it so they can get the very large oil tankers through now.
They have done some improvements, and I can tell you there's tons of American consulting firms there. We ran across a bunch of them who also happen to be burgers and stuff while they're there. I'm not sure they could do it without international support. And like Gamboa, all of those areas, the pipeline road, everything else that used to be taken care of by the US military, you can see that's all really gone downhill. They just don't put the same emphasis on it. So I was kind of wondering what they're spending all that canal money on. Because they get tons of money in tolls and fees for going through that canal. I mean, tons of money. It's an unbelievable amount, which is why banking is really, really big there. But, you know, like most Central American governments, there's some levels of corruption, and I'm not sure all of it's going back to the people and to Panama itself.
But when they widened that canal, I mean, that was billions of dollars.
But Panama didn't pay for that. The international shipping communities paid for that.
Well, that's probably for some of it, probably.
So,
Not any of the canal tolls.
yeah. Now, I don't think it's the same standards that Americans would have kept it all going as, but you know, it's not our country and it's not our stuff. So, but there are a lot, we ran into a lot of American consulting firms there.
You know, the military has a presence there. It may be
didn't see
very
any
under, you
military.
didn't see it, and you won't see it. It's probably not what I'd call military presence. It's probably something else. It's kind of like when we were in Costa Rica and we had a friend that was an American that was high up in the government, and when he needed to find me, he found me in a hurry. And somebody came in and said the phone will ring in 5 minutes and walked out, and that's all. But he worked for the CIA. So, you know, even in Costa Rica, you know, there's people floating around that keep an eye on American interests.
But not US troops anymore.
No, I didn't
there's
see
no US
Guineas.
troops.
I saw plenty of Costa Rican troops, Panama
Police, Panamanian police.
police, and they do have their own military, so.
How about communist Chinese?
Didn't see.
No, didn't encounter it?
I don't know that the Chinese have much influence in Panama itself. You know, they have a lot of influence. as you
South
go-
America they do. But
Yeah, they're trying to weasel their way into everything, because they're big in giving people money to build stuff. When we were in, the place the Chinese has a huge is Cuba. I mean, all the big,
Ecuador also.
Ecuador. But Ecuador, you know, is also American dollars. You know, if you go to Ecuador, it's US currency. But, yeah.
We didn't see a lot of Oriental people at all, but then we didn't spend much time in the city itself.
We
But
didn't
out in the
spend any time.
countryside, we didn't see a lot.
literally, we landed at the airport, we went to the airport hotel, we went to the jungle, and back and out. I have pictures of Panama City somewhere in my slideshow, not in the slideshow, but in my slides, which I took from the top of the tower. That's as close as I ever got to the outside of, however close the hotel was actually to Panama City, I'm not sure. Because, you know, a lot of times these airports are way outside the city, but I'm not sure where that particular airport sits. I never paid attention. When we go places, we don't go where the people are, ever. I mean, if we're just passing through towns. We are strictly birders, wildlife, and conservation, so we don't get into the more fun cultural stuff.
Oh, yes.
So this is a quick question, hopefully. The mannequin, I saw it and it's gorgeous, and I love mannequins, but I've never gotten good pictures of them because they move.
Yeah.
Well, they move around a lot, and if you,
This one was not easy.
this one
It
was
was
not easy.
tree.
This was in
It was
a
rough.
tree high up. It was in the canopy. It was cloudy. That picture has so much noise reduction on it, it's not even funny. It was shot in the dark, as far as I was concerned. But if you really get the shot, it's several place lodges that specialize it. Be there at the lodges that have the Lex, where they have the mannequin Lex, and they can take you in, probably even, some of them probably even have blinds.
Well, and this bird was at a Lex site, but we were not there at the proper time of year for
When they're
the
Lex.
mating display. So that's the real trick to getting mannequins, is to be there at the right time. when they're doing their displays, and that's really about the only time you can see them. The rest of the time, the lake disperses throughout the forest, and they're deep in the jungle and rarely come out of the dark spaces. But during breeding season, at the right time of year. So that's what you have to do. You have to do your research on the one you want to see what time of year they let, where you're going, and that's when you want to go see them.
That's my life.
Yeah. There's a lot of mannequins, and they're all beautiful colors.
They're everything under the sun, red
Real
cap
pretty.
mannequins, blue cap mannequins, blue crown mannequins, club wing mannequins. I mean,
There's a lot of mannequins.
there's a lot of different mannequins and they're comical birds. And some of my pictures, if you find the right tree, right fruiting tree, is mannequins do what's called, what do we call that? Where they go up and snatch the sallying for fruit. So they just fly in and snatch the fruit off and gone. So, if you got high-speed camera gear, you try to catch them in flight when they come in to sally the fruit off the tree. Because they don't land, they just pop it off the tree and keep going.
But Panama's a fascinating and beautiful place, and it's very safe to travel there. So, you should go.